Tractor trouble for the government, as farmers brought Westminster to a standstill several times over the past year, protesting against inheritance tax on family farms. But it has been a victorious campaign. Now the government has announced a pre-Christmas U-turn and raised the inheritance tax threshold on farms from £1 million to £2.5 million.
Imagine, if you will, the serene halls of Buckingham Palace. The king is likely enjoying a quiet Earl Grey, perhaps contemplating the organic mulch in the Highgrove Gardens, when suddenly the air is filled with the unmistakable, rhythmic chugging of 1,000 Massey Fergusons descending upon Whitehall. This is not a parade, this is not a countryside festival, this is a full-blown agrarian uprising, and 3 minutes ago, the political temperature in London reached boiling point. For months, Sir Keir Starmer and his Treasury team have treated the British countryside like a secondary character in a low-budget drama, but the farmers just rewrote the script in permanent marker. We have seen a government that thought it could tax the very dirt under our feet without a fight, only to find themselves staring down the headlights of a rural rebellion. And the word on the palace cobbles. Even the king, a man who has spent 50 years championing the soil, has reportedly reached the end of his tether with a prime minister who seems to think food comes from an app rather than a field. The tension is palpable, the tractors are idling, and the government's Iron Chancellor is looking more like she is made of damp cardboard. Quick favour, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second, and means the world to us. Thanks. If you did, now back to the show.
It's right that we listen to what people are saying to us, to their concerns. That's what I have been doing. That's what the whole of government has been doing. And it's right that we refine the policy in order to make sure that we are protecting more family farms and businesses from inheritance tax. But equally, we're going to make this tax system fairer by making sure that the largest and wealthiest estates pay their fair share.
Let us talk about the U-turn that wasn't quite a U-turn. On Tuesday, the government announced a partial change to the much-hated family farm tax. 1. They raised the inheritance tax relief threshold for agricultural and business property from £1 million to £2.5 million. Now, if you are sitting in a North London coffee shop, £2.5 million sounds like a king's ransom. But if you are sitting in a barn in Cumbria, that barely covers the shed, the combines, and a few acres of grazing land. The government thinks they have performed a grand act of mercy. But for many, it is like being told you only have to lose one leg instead of both. The announcement actually came as a massive surprise to the Treasury's own backbenchers, largely because for months, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have been doubling down on this policy like a gambler at a casino who has already lost his car keys. They have caused months of unnecessary pain, anxiety, and literal heartbreak across the rural community. It has been a disastrous 24 hours for the government, and frankly, the concession feels more like a panic move than a policy shift. They realised that the stable NHS versus farmers narrative was about as popular as a skunk at a garden party. The Daily Express and other champions of the countryside have spent a year highlighting the plight of food growers who genuinely fear for their livelihoods. These aren't wealthy landed gentry in top hats. These are people whose wealth is tied up in soil, sweat and machinery they can't afford to sell. The government tried to play the us versus them game, but they quickly realised that when you pick a fight with the people who provide the breakfast, you usually end up with egg on your face.
Yeah, I think the word hollow victory floated around today. It's a massive improvement because it will probably take 50% of the farms out of the equation. You know, the policy originally affected 85%. So for that to be reduced significantly is massively good news. It really is. It still leaves some of the larger farms, the ones that are probably producing the most food, still caught with something that will be impossible to pay, which is still a shame. So it is not perfect.
Keir Starmer's approach to the countryside over the last 18 months has been nothing short of a tactical masterclass in how to alienate an entire demographic. He famously claimed that voters had a binary choice: a stable national health service or inheritance tax breaks for farmers. It was a classic false dilemma that suggested our doctors are only underpaid because some sheep farmer in Wales wants to leave his tractor to his son. It was cynical, it was divisive, and it backfired spectacularly. Even when independent analysis revealed that the family farm tax would likely cost the Treasury more in economic damage and administrative chaos than it would ever raise in revenue, they ploughed ahead. The hubris was staggering. We even had reports of HM Revenue and Customs practically patting themselves on the back, with rumours of special recognition for the civil servant who dreamt up this fiscal nightmare. They were so busy high-fiving in Whitehall that they failed to notice the convoy of tractors heading their way. And let us not forget the internal casualties. When Marcus Campbell Savoers, the Labour Member of Parliament for Penrith and Solway, stood up and bravely voted against the budget motion because he actually listened to his constituents, he was brutally punished. The party whip was removed faster than a bad habit. Starmer didn't want a debate, he wanted a choir of yes-men, but as it turns out, the yes-men don't drive tractors. Mr. Campbell Savoers is owed a public apology, but given the current climate in Number 10, he is more likely to get a cold shoulder and a bill for the stationery. While the inheritance tax was the headline act, the government's animal welfare strategy arrived like a lead balloon, managing to upset the very people it was supposed to protect. While the monarch is supposed to remain politically neutral, the Constitution allows him 3 rights: the right to be consulted, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. 8. After the scenes we have seen in Whitehall this year, you can bet your last acre that the warning light on the Prime Minister's dashboard has been flashing red. King Charles isn't just a figurehead in this debate, he is a man who understands the long-term stewardship of the land. He knows that you don't build a stable nation by bankrupting the families who have managed the landscape for generations. The government has a very long way to go to rebuild trust. They snuck out the threshold change just before Christmas, hoping no one would notice the climb down, but the farming community has a long memory and very loud horns. 9. Only time will tell if this is the end of the hostilities or just a temporary ceasefire while the Treasury reloads. What is clear is that the fundamental lesson hasn't been learned. You need to work with the rural community, not legislate against them from behind a mahogany desk in London. The perception that Labour is picking a war isn't going away just because they moved a decimal point on a tax form. They need to show they actually value the people who keep the lights on and the plates full in rural Britain. If they don't, those tractor convoys will be the least of their worries come the next election. Thank you for watching.